Hi, Charles County. I'm Doria Fleischer with Media Services, here for an episode of Inside Your County Government. We're going to talk today about legislative proposals and some interesting ones that we have coming up in this year. I'm joined today by Danielle Mitchell. Danielle, you are currently our acting Deputy County Administrator.
Correct.
But you're here in kind of two roles because you're also still our Deputy County Attorney, yes?
Assistant Deputy County Attorney, yes, that's my official role, but I'm taking on an acting job as well. So acting.
The joy of county government is a lot of hats,
Lots
right?
of hats, correct.
But luckily, and we were just talking about this before we started recording, you wear hats really well, and you do a great job in all of your roles. So thanks for being here. You get to decide kind of which hat you want to put on today, but I know you'll do a great job filling our residents in regardless of the hat you're wearing.
My kids always joke that I have a big head, so I don't look good in hats, but thank you. I will take what you're saying, and I'll just go with it.
Tell your kids that is absolutely not true, that you need that big head so you can wear all these different hats.
Like,
no, that's how I fill the hats.
I wear the hat.
You got this.
Very good.
So Danielle, on September 9th, we had our public hearing for legislative proposals, and we've done a lot of conversations with you in past podcasts and videos explaining the legislative proposal process. So I don't want to go too deep because we can direct people in the show notes where to go back and look at that.
Sure.
But give us just a quick overview of what is a legislative proposal and how does it happen?
Sure. So every year, our Board of Commissioners invites members of the public to submit ideas for changes that they would like to see to the Maryland State Code. So a legislative proposal is basically just that. It's an idea that is coming from members of the public, typically, that would look for an amendment to or an addition to the Maryland State Code. So these are state laws that we would need the General Assembly at the state level to pass. These are not things that we can necessarily do at the local level. And so every year, annually, we send out public notices and ask for ideas for changes in the form of legislative proposals. So on September 9th, we held a public hearing to consider the proposals that were submitted during that open process.
Excellent. And who is present? Like, who gets to make that decision in that public hearing?
So during the public hearing, no decisions are formally made. Who gets to hear that information directly and ask questions are the Board of County Commissioners and the Charles County delegation to the Maryland General Assembly. So we have representatives in the Maryland General Assembly, our state legislative body, that represent Charles County. And so those individuals participate in the public hearing process.
Excellent. And then all of our residents are welcome to show up and listen.
Absolutely.
But it's not, they don't engage in that time.
Well, and even they can engage. So if they were to want to provide comments on a legislative proposal that was submitted by another member of the public, they certainly have the opportunity to do that. So they can provide their support for other people's proposals or their opposition to those proposals. That is permitted as a part of the public hearing process.
Excellent. So a level of different levels of engagement
Absolutely.
at the local and at the state level.
Yes.
Super cool.
Yes.
Okay. So Danielle, on September 9th, how many proposals were considered? Like, how many things got said of this is what we're thinking about?
Sure. So on September 9th, we had a total of 23 proposals that the Board of Commissioners and the delegation considered that evening.
Excellent. And of those, how many got put onto the kind of next steps?
Sure. So each proposal was considered at a follow-up work session, which was held on September 23rd. So basically, we used the evening of the public hearing to ask questions directly of the proposals, proposal's author, right? But on September 23rd, which is our follow-up work session date, that is the opportunity really for the Board of Commissioners to debate and discuss those proposals amongst themselves. So members of the public are always invited to observe the work of the Board of Commissioners, but technically that is a discussion that happened amongst them. And that day, so on September 23rd at the work session, they considered a total of 24 proposals. And the reason for that is because we did have an additional proposal that came from our county attorney's office. It has to do with our liquor board rules, and they felt that that needed to actually be a part of the board's consideration for the 2026 General Assembly session. So they didn't want to wait a whole year basically to make the request to have a change to the state law related to the liquor board.
Okay. And our commissioners worked through it. How do they make the decisions? And I know I'm asking you to kind of think in the mind of a commissioner, but what's kind of the process behind of those 24? What do we think about?
So I think there's a number of things that the commissioners need to consider or do consider, in my experience here, I've seen it time and time again. I think the likelihood of success is certainly a consideration, right? So if they know that they're facing really an uphill battle with the Charles County delegation, perhaps they heard at that public hearing statements from our delegation that would suggest that they're really not supportive of a particular proposal. I think that is a part of their consideration, although not entirely, making up their minds. But I would say the likelihood of success, meaning how likely is it that the Charles County delegation is going to really take this issue up, because they're the ones that have to actually decide to support the proposal, to have it drafted into a bill, and to really advocate for it amongst the General Assembly. So if there's a likelihood that they're not going to be willing to do that, I think that's one consideration of the Board of Commissioners, but certainly not the only one. In addition to that, I would say a well-stated problem that the legislation is attempting to solve. So if the commissioners don't see this issue as being an issue, right?
Then it doesn't need to be resolved.
Then it doesn't need to be resolved, and they likely would not support it. So I would say those are two main things. Also, I would say really the questions that we're asking on our legislative proposal form are the things that the board wants to consider. So what is the problem? And then are there any organizations that support this? Are there any organizations or entities that would object to this? Those are all things I think that would help the commissioners gauge what is the level of support around this particular issue. Is it something that we're going to be able to really get the support of the community around? Is it something that we're going to really have to battle to sort of get it moving?
It's the benefit of the risk. Is that a fair? The benefit of the work, even, because a lot of work goes into this.
Because there's political capital that has to be expended anytime that you want to move one of these. So I would say all of those things are factors, and that's why it's really important at that public hearing to basically explain what it is you're seeking and why it matters to the Charles County community, because those are the things that the commissioners need to understand.
That makes sense. It's so less of, this is just something on my mind, but more, this is really an important thing.
Exactly.
This is how it impacts the community.
This
is why it's going to get better if we do this. This is
absolutely
perfect. Okay. So we went from 24 things to consider.
Right.
And how many of those are moving forward?
So far, we have 14 proposals that the commissioners agreed to support at the end of their work session on the 23rd. Those 14 proposals, well, in addition to those, there was another 4 proposals that they really wanted additional information about, and they did not make a decision one way or another. So I would say total, we have 18 that could potentially move to the next level, which would be sending them back to the Charles County delegation with the support of the commissioners.
That makes sense.
And then 5 of them would not be moving forward because they elected not to support them.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm gonna put you on the spot, Danielle.
Okay.
Can we run through those 14? Will you give us just kind of an overview? I know
Happy to do it.
I don't want to take up all day of your time, but give us just a little bit of each one if you don't mind.
Sure. So let's see. We can start with a proposal to amend the Maryland Homeowners Association Act. This was submitted by a resident, Miss Gloria Sawyers. Miss Sawyers was really concerned about the ability for HOAs to assess fees to townhome communities that are within a larger HOA community. So imagine you have a primary HOA or homeowners association, and then you have like a secondary.
Okay.
So what she was finding in her community, and it's very well documented at Southampton, is that they're being assessed certain fees from the larger Southampton HOA while also paying additional assessments for the townhomes specifically. So she was looking for some legislation that would cap that, or basically act as like a control on the ability for the primary HOA to impact the secondary homeowners.
Okay, great.
Next, we have a proposal concerning predatory activities related to veterans claims. This was submitted by a resident by the name of Mr. Mike Moses. Mr. Moses is well known in the community, so I'm sure people know that name, and he does a lot of work around veterans affairs. So his concern is that you have organizations or individuals that will attempt to file claims for veterans or act as an assistant to a veteran to help them file claims with the Veterans Administration, charging them fees or not really being properly certified to do that kind of work. And so they really do behave in a more predatory way, and he would like legislation that would prevent individuals or organizations, businesses from being able to do that.
Okay.
Next, we have a proposal to increase the higher education scholarship for the student member of the Board of Education. This was actually submitted by the Charles County Board of Education. Right now, their student member does receive a scholarship. They do not receive like a salary, right?
Okay.
So what the board member gets, that is the student representative, is the scholarship money. Right now it's $1,000. The Board of Education would like to see that increase to $5,000. And the Board of Commissioners was happy to support that.
Great.
Next, we have a proposal to include vehicle dealers, rental, and lease companies as owners subject to automated speed and traffic control enforcement. And this was submitted by the Charles County Sheriff's Office. What I found really interesting about this proposal is that it's not already happening. Mm-hmm. So basically, I was under the impression, I think a lot of the broader community would be under the impression that just because you have a dealer plate or because you're a rental car company, you would think that you would still be subject to speed camera and traffic enforcement, like red light camera violations. But that is not the case in Maryland. And so they are actually currently exempted. So if you were to get a ticket with a dealer plate or while you are renting a vehicle, you would not receive that ticket if you received the violation in the state of Maryland. So again, I think that there are local jurisdictions, I know for sure DC is one of them that they will track you down and they will cause you to pay.
So this is an interesting one where we can model after other jurisdictions and say we've not done this, but this would be something that we could do, and we can just mimic what other places are doing.
Correct. And so right now they're not liable for those, and we just have to basically throw them out when the sheriff's office gets those. But they're looking to make a change to the law so that they will be able to actually enforce and collect on the fines for speed camera and red light camera tickets.
That makes sense. I would have never thought about that either, Danielle. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
I just assumed that
everyone who drives would be subject to those,
regardless
and that
I rented that car and I was in it on that day. So that's an interesting things you don't think about.
And they do that in other jurisdictions. Yeah. The enterprise will send you a little note. I think they'll actually just take it right off of the card that you have on record. But for whatever reason, Maryland didn't have that. So we're looking to do that. So the sheriff's office,
and this is great where the sheriff's office recognized, that's their problem.
Right.
So they're bringing it to the commissioners and delegation to say, fix it. Great.
Yep, exactly. Next is a proposal to require proof of identification in connection with certain crimes against public health. So this is one where there's a civil citation related to a public health violation. So for example, something like cannabis, cannabis odor, smoking or ingesting cannabis in public. If the law enforcement officer were to ask the individual that they have probable cause to believe has done that, if that person didn't want to provide their ID, there's nothing in the law that would require it. There's nothing in the law that would mandate it. This is another surprise for me anyway. So what the sheriff's office is looking for is a change to the law that would require someone, upon the request of law enforcement, to actually provide proof of identification. Okay. And that doesn't necessarily, and I believe the sheriff's office talked about this the evening of the public hearing, it's to the satisfaction of the officer. So, if you have a driver's license, I think that's the common way that people typically provide their proof of ID. But if there's another way for you to do that to the satisfaction of the officer, you would be required to do it. But right now, there is no requirement.
To show any form of ID at all?
No.
Okay.
So an officer, again, can see you visibly breaking the law, and if it's one of those civil infractions, they don't have the ability to do anything except for make the request for your ID, and if they can't get you to acquiesce, then they cannot write the citation.
But this is requesting that law be changed.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Next is a recreation fee. This was actually requested by our Director of Recreation, Parks, and Tourism for Charles County Government, along with our County Administrator, Deb Hall. They would like to have a recreation fee included on the real property tax bill of each property owner in Charles County. This would be used to support recreational amenities, particularly the sports and wellness complex that is slated to go at the former Sears building in Waldorf.
Gotcha. And I'm laughing at that one a little bit because big shout out to Deb Hall, who, as our acting county administrator, came and volunteered her time at our county fair outreach table and was repeatedly asking people who came to the table, would you support this?
She's doing her own little research.
She was doing, and I kept saying, like, Deb, like, please don't make people uncomfortable when they come to the table. Like, we just want to give them materials. And she was like, Doria, I just want to know what they think. And people gave great feedback.
Did they? Okay, very
here's
good.
to Deb out in public doing her job. I mean, Deb is boots on the ground, which I really appreciate.
So. Literally, yes.
Yes.
That's funny. Okay. Next, we have a proposal to require training for common ownership community members. This was submitted by our resident, Mr. Christopher Bullock. So this is really looking at those individuals that are sitting on like your HOA boards to ensure that they have a minimum level of training. Obviously, we know that these HOA boards handle a lot of money. They handle a lot of responsibilities, contracts, all sorts of things. Mr. Bullock's concern is that basically there is no requirement for any sort of knowledge, skills, abilities when it comes to sitting on HOA boards. And so he would like to have some sort of minimum requirement.
Gotcha. Okay.
Next, also submitted by Mr. Bullock, is a proposal to require candidates for common ownership community boards certified to certain assessment and violation information. So again, his concern was if you were going to be in a position of leadership with one of these HOA boards or what we call common ownership community boards, that you basically be in line with the rules and regulations of that community. So if you have outstanding assessments, if you have outstanding fines, architectural violations, things of that nature, that is something that you should have to basically clear up before you can sit on an
One
HOA
of those
board.
boards. Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Okay. Next, we have a proposal to provide housing relief for seniors through mandated rent stabilization. This one was a little bit more controversial, I would say, in the sense that we did have a member of the public who was really concerned about the impact to their community. So basically what rent stabilization is, another term would be like rent control. So this would be mandating a certain limit on how much rents may increase year over year for the tenant.
But for senior tenants,
And
for
this
tenants
is
of a certain age.
This is specifically for senior tenants.
Okay.
So yes, tenants of a particular age. So again, the commissioners have heard a lot about rising rents. Affordable housing is really an issue across the board, but particularly for our seniors who we say have, what do we refer to it as? Like
limited income, and their income's not getting bigger
it
each
can't
year.
get big.
Yes.
Right. The odds are that they're unable to really make any significant difference.
Right.
And so
We're not
changes
asking our seniors to go out and get a second job so that they
Right.
can stay in the place they've been living.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So this would be seeking to have legislation at the state level that would allow for these kinds of restrictions on rent increases for seniors. And then the next set of proposals are really funding requests. They were all submitted by Commissioner Collins seeking state funding for various projects. So I can tell you that those include a proposal to commit state resources to the development of a ferry service that would connect Indian Head to the National Harbor in Alexandria, Virginia. There was also a proposal for state funding to create real-time crime centers. There was a proposal seeking state funding to assist in the creation of a housing trust fund, and then a proposal to fund implementation of the Blue Zone Assessment Readiness and Feasibility Study that was actually led by our Charles County Health Department. There's an excellent Netflix documentary that talks about blue zones if people are interested in learning exactly what that is. But essentially, Commissioner Collins is looking for funding to help implement some of the initiatives around creating a blue zone for Charles County.
So these are all saying, Charles County thinks this is important, but we need to know that the state is going to support this. We need your
Right.
money to help with that.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's one more. There was a proposal for state funding for Waldorf redevelopment. That would include efforts around walkability in the Waldorf Urban Development Corridor. So those were all funding requests specifically submitted by Commissioner Collins.
Beautiful. Okay. So I'm tracking as you're going. Danielle, this is a lot. And I'm reminding myself of why I'm so glad you have your job and I don't have my job, like that I'm not doing your job, because this is a lot to keep track of and the why. So thank you. We have the 4 that are coming back. Is that correct?
That's right. So these 4 proposals were a part of the package, and the commissioners were looking for additional information.
Okay. And what are do you mind touching briefly on that group?
Sure. So there was one proposal that was submitted by Mr. Carlos Childs. It was for special elections to fill vacancies for certain elected offices, specifically for the Board of Commissioners. I believe he also, in addition to the Board of Commissioners, he was looking at the state's attorney's office to have special elections, and I think there was one more, I can tell you.
Yeah, the way it's written, it just says for certain elected offices, but I'm assuming that it's written more clearly than that.
I think so. I believe Mr. Childs was looking for specific offices, so let me get to his. He was interested in having special elections to fill vacancies for the Board of Commissioners, anytime there's a vacancy there, also the Sheriff's Office, and the state's attorney.
Excellent.
So the commissioners were not necessarily opposed to the idea, but they wanted more information about how those vacancies would be currently filled under existing law. So right now with the Board of Commissioners, we know that the governor would actually make the appointment, and if the commissioner is a part of a party affiliation, then it would come as a recommendation from that central committee. What the commissioners also wanted to know is how we're currently appointing or electing the sheriff and the state's attorney when those vacancies occur. And so that's information that we will provide to them on October 7th.
So we're looking for, we can't quite say it yet. We want to know kind of some more information.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I just want to throw out there, I'm always appreciative of seeing Carlos Childs as one of our Citizens Academy ambassadors. So it always makes me happy when somebody who's completed Citizens Academy continues that advocacy engagement in the community.
Yes. And then also, and I think also too with special elections, I think and I've actually spoken to him about this, it allows the people to make the decision as opposed to the governor. And so I think for him, that is really the goal, is to make sure that the people's decisions and voices are heard in the process.
Stays as democratic as possible.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Next, we have a proposal to implement attendance requirements for the Board of Commissioners. And this was submitted by Mr. Joseph Make. The commissioners wanted to know how the Board of Education handles attendance. What is their policy around that? That's really another local board that we can point to, because otherwise you're talking about positions that are elected, but they don't necessarily operate as a board, right? The Sheriff's Office, State's Attorney. So as far as another local board, do they have attendance requirements? Is that in written policy, and what does that look like? They wanted something to kind of compare
a nice
it
comparable.
to.
No, that makes sense.
So that one will come back again on October 7th with that additional information, as well as a proposal to create an Office of Community Relations to assist with issues related to common ownership communities. So again, think about your homeowners association. This was also submitted by Christopher Bullock. The commissioners were interested in knowing how our existing HOA DRB, so Homeowners Association Dispute Review Board, which is a citizen board or a resident board that we currently have, what could the role be for that existing board with respect to what it is that Mr. Bullock is looking for?
So we don't necessarily need to create something new if there's a way to use what already exists.
Use what we have. If we need to maybe change their mission slightly, is there a way to do that to accomplish the goal as opposed to setting up a new board?
Gotcha.
Or a new office, rather. And then lastly, a proposal to expand agritourism to include breweries. This was submitted by Commissioner Coates. The commissioners wanted more information about whether this is something that can be accomplished through local zoning code, or is this something that really does require the state to act, or is it something that we can accomplish? Now, anything with liquor licenses is entirely exclusively in the purview of the state. So we don't have any local brewery, winery, distillery licensing, right? All of that licensing is going to come from the state, and there's the Alcohol and Cannabis article that addresses that. So what the commissioners were really trying to figure out is, in order to include or expand agritourism to include breweries, is that something that's needed as a part of state statute, or is that something that we handle as a part of the zoning code, which is local? So it gets a little technical, but we intend to bring them back that information. So I believe those were the 4 that we needed to come back with additional information so that the commissioners could make a decision.
So I'm laughing that now you get to put on your attorney hat
The research
and go find
hat.
that.
Right,
Yeah, go find that information and bring it back.
Yep.
Danielle, that was a lot of information, and I so appreciate you taking the time to go through it, because that public hearing was a lot of hours.
Sure.
And the work session was a lot of hours. And I know that some of our residents don't have the time or the capacity to sit through that. So I really appreciate you. I always say that you're one of our best folks at being able to take these kind of complex things and make them digestible. So once again, you've done it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for doing that. We're so lucky to have you. And I know I always joke about your hourly rate as a lawyer compared to your Charles County government civil servant employee salary. But please know that
it's all good.
What we love you for hopefully matches the salary, the love and respect we have for Danielle Mitchell.
This is my community too,
Yeah.
so I enjoy what I do, and I'm happy to go, provide the information, allow the commissioners to make informed decisions as best I can. I take that serious, so I appreciate it. It's all good.
Well, thank you, Danielle Mitchell, our acting deputy county administrator, as well as our county attorney, deputy county attorney, and our Charles County neighbor. So here's to the many hats of Danielle Mitchell.
Thank you.
We're so grateful to have you. And thank you to our Charles County viewers and listeners for tuning in. We hope you found this information helpful to know what's happening next. Our public, I'm sorry, Danielle, what is the correct word on October 7th? It's our...
So October 7th will be a follow-up work session on the 2026 preliminary legislative proposals.
So you can certainly tune into that. You can always find us online and watch live, or you can get the meeting afterwards. If you have questions about the legislative proposal process, we'll make sure that our previous episodes that go into that are in the show notes. And as always, Charles County, thank you so much for being willing to take the time to get this information, share it with your friends, family, and networks. Thank you so much. Take care, stay safe, and stay engaged.
Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast and want to hear more, search Charles County Government on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And be sure to like and subscribe. We're also available on YouTube. Search Charles County Commissioners. And stay connected for all county news, information, and programs by visiting www.charlescountymd.gov/stay connected.